The transmission came in fragments. Not words, not numbers, but fear. Encoded not in language, but in behavior, in the panicked scatter of satellites, the severing of long-range beacons, the ghosting of scout vessels. Ships meant to chart habitable systems simply vanished, their telemetry ending in an abrupt spasm of static. When one did return, its databanks overwritten with encrypted dread, the Coalition took notice. Then they read the coordinates. A yellow star. 8 planets. The third one. Blue, clouded, humming with electromagnetic life. The signal was ancient and cold now, just a ripple from a probe that had passed too close to its edge, but the shape was unmistakable. Earth, Council convened in silence. There had been rumors, centuries old, whispered stories from the galactic fringe of a death world with no name, whose only emissaries were silent machines wandering the void like aimless weapons. Many believed it myth, a cautionary tale, told to dissuade over-ambitious explorers. But now the myth had a location. The myth was awake. They sent observers first. Machines that mimicked comet trails and starlight. Even those had to be reinforced against solar radiation, acid-etched atmospheres, and radiation belts that danced with electric fury. Earth, it seemed, did not welcome guests. But the machines saw life. Everywhere. Thriving in water that could drown, in air that could poison, in soil that writhed with competing ecosystems. They saw structured grids of light, soaring towers, great metal birds soaring through the clouds. They watched as one species walked upright, clothed itself in metals and fabrics, tamed beasts, wrote books, launched rockets, humans, expected to see an apex predator, the natural ruler of such a world. But what they found was stranger. The humans had no claws. Their fangs were vestigial, their skin soft, terrible. They died easily. 2 bullets, 2 knives, 2 radiation, and time, and yet they were everywhere. No other species had touched their world and survived. Apex predators had once existed, gigantic lizards, prowling cats, feathered raptors, but the humans had outlasted them all. No, not outlasted. The humans didn't just survive their predators, they replaced them. They built traps, crafted weapons, set forests on fire to flush them out, painted cave walls with their blood. And then, when they'd won, they invented gods to forgive themselves. The observers were silent. Their report was not written in panic, but in awe. This species was not born to rule its world. It learned too. And then, it taught the world to fear it. Across the stars, the xenobiologist Dr. Valatar of the Shelley Collective read the report. His mandibles twitched. He had spent his life cataloging intelligence, studying neural structures, predator-prey dynamics, evolutionary psychology. Most sapient species, he'd discovered, evolved from prey-fast, clever, communal. Intelligence was a survival strategy, born from fear. But humans weren't prey. Nor were they predators in the way the Council understood it. Predators hunted for need. When they fed, they stopped. Their hunger was biological. Humans hunted for ideas. Dr. Valatar found ancient footage, digitized memories scraped from Earth's ancient networks. He watched wars, riots, gladiators, a man boxing another for sport, a child with a slingshot, a woman laughing as she fired a gun into the sky. And then he found the reflex test. A simple medical video. A hammer tapping below the kneecap. The leg jerks. The patient laughs nervously. Valatar replayed the video 23 times. Why does it flinch? No threat is present. The hammer is soft. The environment is sterile. And yet the body reacts. Faster than thought, faster than choice. This species expects to be attacked. Always. The Council of Galactic Sentience debated for weeks. Do we approach? Do we hide? Do we preemptively strike? They're disorganized, some argued, fragmented, fighting amongst themselves. But others saw the truth Valatar had uncovered. Humanity fights itself because there's nothing left that can challenge it. And in the silence of a galactic chamber orbiting a sunless star, the Shelley xenobiologist whispered, "You misunderstand. They are not divided. They are training." Above Earth, a probe blinked into life. It had been dormant for centuries. A relic of the first frightened encounter when a passing Shelley drone had mistaken Voyager 1's golden disk for a warning sigil. It had fled, screaming into deep space. But now, Earth noticed, and it blinked back. Far below, in a cryovolcanic moon's orbit, Valatar prepared for descent. He would be the first to speak to the children of Earth, the first to stand among those who had not just survived their predators, but had devoured the very concept of apex. He clutched his translator crystal, read the human phrase etched into its core. We fear the dark not because it hides monsters, but because we remember being hunted. And the stars for a moment held their breath. He had prepared for years. Not for Landini, fool could do that, provided they weren't incinerated by Earth's unruly magnetosphere, or torn apart by its swirling weather systems. No, Dr. Valatar prepared for something far more dangerous. His kind Shelley were old, not in age, but in philosophy. Their species had evolved in the crevasses of cliffside reefs, always watching the skies for swooping death. Their intelligence had been forged by caution. They revered hesitation, worshipped risk assessment. Their entire culture orbited around one sacred idea: do not wake what sleeps below. But humanity had awakened everything. Their legends were full of it: dragons, titans, monsters beneath the sea, and inside themselves. And they didn't flee these myths. They hunted them. They found them. And when they were real, they killed them. The shuttle dropped through Earth's atmosphere with controlled violence, a burning streak across the morning sky. Sensors wind. Counter thrusters flared. Valatar's body compressed in its pod, wrapped in stabilizing gels and cognitive sedatives. But nothing prepared him for the first sound. It wasn't words, not music, not communication. It was laughter. The humans were watching his descent. They were enjoying it. The landing site had been selected months earlier, scrubbed plain outside a mid-sized city neutral, unthreatening. Earth's representatives agreed to meet him there. They arrived late, not because of disrespect, but because of traffic. Automobiles' primitive machines still operated by hand clogged their roads. The humans joked about it in their greeting messages, sending memes and apologies in dozens of languages. Sorry, we're still working on that. Valatar had studied 100 sapient species. None of them laughed at their own incompetence. It was the first red flag. The humans who met him were not warriors, not in the traditional sense. No weapons, no armor, no ceremonial blades. Came in suits, some in military dress, some in lab coats, one in jeans and a band t-shirt. One of them, a woman with gray streaks in her hair and a cigarette in her mouth, offered him something from a tin box. Chocolate? She said. Valatar refused. Later in his field notes he recorded, observation: species consumes concentrated neurotoxins recreationally, appears unaware or indifferent to chemical properties, claims ingestion improves mood. Conclusion: suicidal tendencies normalized. They shook his appendages without permission, smiled too much, made eye contact for too long. But worst of all, they touched his ship. They were not afraid. 3 days passed. He was invited to observe, to ask questions, to be shown what the humans called civilization. He was shown a hospital, then a university, then a zoo. There were no apex predators there, not anymore. They were all in cages. Taxidermied, gone, lions, bears, wolves reduced to exhibits. Children pointed at them while holding ice cream. A man in a hat explained how one species had nearly killed itself with cuteness alone. Pandas? Too lazy to breed, fed by humans who wanted to keep them alive, because they were adorable. Valatar stood in the predator wing for hours, reading signs. All extinct? Or nearly so. Humans, it seemed, didn't compete with apex predators. They adopted them, then replaced them, then erased them. He met a child in a park. The boy was 5 years old, pale, small, with wide green eyes and a gap-toothed grin. He was holding something in his hands. A spider. Alive. The child let it crawl over his knuckles, then held it up to Valatar. Want to see? Valatar recoiled. The spider's venom could kill a Shelley in seconds. But the child laughed. She's nice. Her name's Gracie. His mother smiled from a bench nearby, sipping coffee. He collects bugs. They don't bother him. Later, Valatar asked, why do you let him handle lethal creatures? The mother blinked. Because he's careful, and if he isn't, he'll learn. This, Valatar realized, was the core truth of the human condition. They flirt with death, befriend it, then dare it to strike again. His final interview was with a historian. The human was soft-spoken, with glasses and a map of Earth's wars etched into his skin tattoos of dates and locations. When asked about humanity's most dangerous weapon, the historian said nothing. He simply showed a picture, not of a bomb, not of a virus. As a single man, climbing a mountain in a storm that had already killed 2 of his friends, teeth broken, fingers blackened by frostbite, still ascending. The caption, because it was there. Back aboard his ship, Valitar wrote a private log. There is no apex predator here. There is no fear here. There's only hunger. For challenge, for purpose, for anything stronger than themselves. And in their boredom, they may yet become the very monsters they once hunted. He prepared to leave. But before he did, he asked one final question to his translator. Why do humans still flinch? The translator considered, then replied, because something once hunted them. Part of them is still listening. Above the Earth, in the cold orbit where machines once warned the stars to stay away, a new signal was launched. Not a threat, a question. What do you fear? And across the galaxy, the answer came slowly. We fear Earth, but Earth fears nothing. The galaxy did not respond with war. That was not its way. And faced with a threat, the Council of Sapient Harmonies convened a threat response convocation. Delegates came from all corners of the Orion Reach. Empaths and psychologians, ethicists and xenostrategists. Not a single one was a soldier, because they had no soldiers. Not anymore. Their history books were filled with war. Their pre-sapient pasts were violent, brutal, and desperate. But as each species climbed toward intelligence, a strange pattern emerged. The apex predators never made it. Predation had a limit. Apex species grew lazy, slow, singular. Their brains stagnated at the top. But the Pratha ones who learned to run, to think in groups, to hide and build and strategize, they adapted. They formed civilization. And then they left their worlds behind. The prey inherited the stars. And now, in orbit above their great conference world of Euthelis, they stared at the anomaly, the outlier, the impossible. Humans. It wasn't just that humans had survived. It was how they had. Surveillance drones showed them laughing at death, weaponizing boredom, and turning predator extinction into a casual byproduct of curiosity. They didn't just avoid being eaten. They eliminated the need for predators entirely. Where other species developed teeth or armor, humans developed nightmares and then turned those nightmares into bedtime stories. On Earth, the Council's most gifted emotional analyst equari, empath named Teloni, watched hours of human media. She cried for 3 days, not out of sadness, but out of something more primitive. She had felt it again. The thing her species forgot. The sensation of being hunted. The convocation convened. The great circular chamber of Ithaliss filled with trembling bioluminescent pulses, ultrasonic whines, and chemical scents of unease. Species who had not known fear in generations now fidgeted and blinked and cast nervous glances toward the empty space on the galactic maps marked Sol System, do not approach. That line had been written 312 years ago. After Voyager 1 and 2 were intercepted and misinterpreted as autonomous kill drones, the Council issued a passive quarantine on Earth. Back then, it was precaution. Now it felt like a prison built to protect the galaxy from the inmates. The head of the convocation was a Serati noble named Hymind Elashator, whose people once domesticated their own apex predators before those predators outbred them into extinction. He addressed the delegates. We have observed the species designated Homo sapiens. Their biology is robust. Their psychology is erratic. Their culture is engineered for instability. He paused. But the question we must now answer is this. Are they a threat? Or are they simply a mirror? A Kekatari spore reader floated up in its nutrient tank. They flinch. They fear. That means they can be reasoned with. A diplomat from the Lithari swarm vibrated with unease. No, that's not fear. It's memory. Reflex from a time when death came on silent feet. They do not feel fear the way we do. They study it. They wear it like armor. Silence fell. Then a projection appeared. A video. Human children running through a haunted house attraction. Laughing, screaming, coming back for more. It wasn't training. It was fun. The Council panicked. In secret, a new protocol was drafted: containment through simulation. If humanity needed a threat, then a threat would be given. A manufactured galactic challenge. Something to distract them. A mystery. A puzzle. Game of exploration and diplomacy. Give them purpose. Or watch them invent one themselves, and burn the stars down with it. But Earth was already listening. From the outer rim of the Orion Arm, a relay station detected an anomaly. A small probe, human-made, silent, watching. Its data stream was benign, mostly poetry and weather patterns. But buried deep within its encoding was something else. A list not of enemies, of questions. How fast can your ships go? What happens if we jump without a destination? Do your gods bleed? What if the monsters we made weren't monsters after all? The probe carried no weapons, but every species that studied it came away shaken, because the questions weren't for war, they were for sport. Back on Earth, humanity hadn't unified. It's not in the way the Council hoped. There was no grand government, no single voice. But there was something else. They built artificial intelligence to solve problems before problems existed. They created simulations of themselves, billions of minds playing out scenarios, building stories, imagining enemies more terrifying than reality could supply. They were training, constantly, for threats that did not yet exist. One of the Council's youngest observers, a fear insectoid, watched hours of human content before clicking her mandibles and uttering her first words in Standard. They missed the chase. Deep beneath the human ocean, in the Mariana Trench, a station came online. Not military, a testing ground. Above the clouds, on the dark side of the moon, another. And in orbit of Saturn, something darker. A relay station, disguised as an abandoned telescope array, constantly sweeping the stars. Not to look outward, but inward. To see who might be watching them. Because humans already knew. The galaxy had flinched. The story was spreading. Not among humans. Among the stars. Children of prey species huddled in dormitories, whispering of Earth, not as a monster, but as a myth. Not of cruelty, but of purpose. Because deep down, in the fear-itched marrow of every sentient species, was a longing they didn't understand. A desire to be strong, to hunt, to survive in spite of everything. And humanity had done it. They were not the apex predators. They were the children of the ones who had killed the apex, and they were bored. The first alien defector was barely a child. She had seen the footage grainy old, from a human ship's body command. Something inside her had stirred. Not horror, not revulsion, longing. She was Lithari, born to a species of hive thinkers that evolved from subterranean grazers. Her kind prided themselves on unity, calm, predictability. They had no concept of rebellion. Until her name was unpronounceable, but she took a human one instead. Syrah. She stowed away aboard a diplomatic shuttle, slipped into Earth's orbit. And before she could be returned under treaty obligations, she activated her translator and said one thing to the stunned Terran welcome team. I want to learn how to run toward the danger. She was not the last. Within months, more began arriving. Children of prey worlds. Quiet thinkers. Nervous learners. Not warriors, not scouts. But each carried the same question burning behind their eyes. Why do we flinch? And humanity, strange, impulsive, dangerous humanity, did not turn them away. They opened their doors. They called it the Kin Program. Unofficial, unfunded, unstoppable. The Council of Sapient Harmonies called it something else. A contagion. They sent envoys, warnings, then sanctions, then surveillance ships that lingered at the edge of soul space like vultures that had forgotten what meat tasted like. But nothing worked, because this wasn't conquest. This was conversion. The Kin Program became a legend. Hidden deep in the outlands of Earth's less-named zones, deserts, tundras, under oceans, humans taught them not how to fight, but how to stop running. They taught the Lithari how to sprint, how to scream, how to hit something and not flinch from the noise. They taught the Quarry how to face darkness and not beg the stars for light. They taught them how to look into fear and smile. A human instructor named Jules, battle-scarred and soft-spoken, stood in front of a training circle, surrounded by trembling alien students. Out there, he said, your ancestors ran from tooth and claw. Ours ran toward it. Not because we were brave, because we were stupid. A ripple of nervous laughter, he smiled. But here's the thing. Bravery is just stupidity and purpose. You feel it now? That itch in your spine? That's your blood remembering what you used to be? He tapped his chest. We didn't evolve to survive. We evolved to challenge survival itself. He stepped aside. A gate opened. Beyond it, wind, cold, and the unknown. Now run. They did not a way into it. The council tried to interfere again. This time, they sent an observer ship, a peaceful delegation, officially diplomatic, unofficially afraid. They landed on Earth, requested a visit to a kin enclave. They were granted one, were not prepared. What they found was not a military base. It was an overgrown research station half swallowed by vines and mountain fog. Children of 50 species ran obstacle courses, wrestled in padded arenas, and screamed into the void just to hear themselves echo. One of the observers, a Varel named Saucy, whispered through her breathing flutes there, celebrating fear. A kin student half her size, compound-eyed and drenched in mud, looked up at her and said, "No, we're domesticating it." Elsewhere in the galaxy, the movement spread, illicitly at first, then openly. The children of prey worlds began leaving home, not in masses, not in revolution, just a few at a time, quietly. With purpose, they were not defecting to humanity. They were defecting to an idea. The council tried to shut down communication lines. They failed. Because humans had already invented 10,000 ways to stay in touch without permission, meshed networks. Subspace dead drops. Old carrier probes launched before the ban that now served as message boards and smuggling archives. The stars were whispering. And the whisper was this: you do not have to fear forever. Ow. On the forest moon of Skaran, a 12-year-old Yathari child stood at the edge of a cliff. He had come from a species so timid, they bred their instincts down to nothing. He'd never seen blood, never touched dirt. But he had seen a kin broadcaster's shaky helmet feed of a human climbing a rock face during a storm, singing to themselves while lightning crashed around them. It had made him cry. Not from terror, from yearning. And now, here he was. He took a step forward, jumped. He landed safely on the soft moss below, laughing. He'd never laughed like that before. He didn't know it, but in the trees above, a human scout watched through binoculars, marking the time, heart rate, reflex metrics, not for science, for understanding. He whispered into a recorder. Phase 1 complete. They're starting to remember. Humanity hadn't set out to transform the galaxy. What it was happening anyway. Not through war, not through invasion, but through permission. Permission to stop being prey. And the apex ghosts, the ones buried in human DNA, the predators who never got to speak, smiled in their graves. Their children had done it. They'd passed the fire on. In the quiet halls of the council, panic turned to confusion. They hadn't been invaded. They had been infected, and no vaccine could cure it. Because it was older than species. It was the memory of the chase. The tension between breath and silence, the thrill of risk, the defiant spark of something cornered that still bares its teeth. That was the human gift, not destruction. Remembering what it meant to be dangerous, and giving others the courage to feel it too. The first riot didn't happen on Earth. It happened in the Hall of Accord, deep in the heart of the Jathari Dominion, a glass and gold parliament dome orbiting a dying star. For centuries, it had been the untouched heart of bureaucracy, where policy was whispered behind sterilized force fields and sterilized minds. That day it cracked. A youth delegation barely of age, clothed in ceremonial silks and respectful silences, stood and refused to sit again. One of them, a girl of the Quarry people, stepped forward and held up something strange. Human bootprint burned into a steel plate, recovered from a forgotten outpost. It was old, scarred, melted from plasma exposure. She held it like an artifact, set into the chamber's hush. This is what made them strong, not their weapons, not their ships, their footprints. They walked toward danger. They left a trail. We've spent 10,000 years avoiding pain. They followed it. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Some fainted. Others rose, not in protest, in understanding. It spread faster than the council could censor it, because the youth didn't need ships or weapons or authority. They had questions. And questions were louder than wars. Soon a phrase echoed across forbidden feeds, darknet transmissions, encoded into ship hulls and tattooed beneath fur, scales, feathers, and skin. 3 words. We remembered teeth. Not because they wanted to bite, but because they wanted to stop biting themselves. The council panicked. They moved to act. A new protocol. Containment Theta. Ban all travel to Earth. Seal the kin program. Intercept defectors. And DIF, that failed invoke the ultimate sanction. Burn Earth. The fleet assembled in silence. Dreadnoughts from across the species lines. Plasma cores humming. Planet killer warheads quietly armed. No fanfare, no comms. They weren't coming to make a point. They were coming to make an example. But Earth knew. Long before the fleet breached the Orc cloud, humanity had already seen them coming. Not through spies, through patterns. Humans had learned centuries ago that fear always speaks loudest in silence. So when the stars quieted, Earth listened. In the Council's command bridge, Admiral Kelshara stared at the screen. Earth was quiet. Quiet. Deploy the deterrence array, she ordered. Nothing happened. No response from shipboard AI, her second-in-command whispered. Then came the flicker. One by one, across the dreadnought formation, lights blinked out. Engines disengaged. Navigation failed. Not from sabotage, from internal override. And then the messages began. From the youngest crew members, the janitors, the support techs, the cadets, all saying the same thing. We will not erase the only species that taught us what we could be. The fleet died without a shot. Not in flames. In refusal. On Earth, humans didn't gloat. They watched. Waited. Offered no threat, just an open door. And from across the stars, the children of prey walked through it. Not as soldiers, not as conquerors. As something new. The council collapsed within the year. Not from revolution. From irrelevance. They ruled prey, and prey no longer wanted to be prey. In the aftermath, a strange new alliance emerged. Not a government, not an empire. A promise, called the Pact of Teeth. Its motto, it's written in every language known and unknown. We were hunted. We choose what we chase. In humanity, they stepped back. Quietly, carefully. Because they understood what came next wasn't theirs to lead. They had been the first, but not the last. They were the spark, but the fire belonged to the galaxy now. And deep beneath old archives and decaying satellites, a message played on loop. Unmonitored, uncensored. It was a clip from an ancient Earth documentary. A lion chasing wildebeest across a dusty plain. And a narrator's voice, older than memory, whispering, "In every creature lies the memory of the hunt." And now, the galaxy remembered. They never made a monument for the humans. No statues of steel or gold, no parades or eternal flames. Just a quiet grove. On the planet once called Sarnath now, renamed Hasari, meaning breath after fear, there is a stretch of green where nothing artificial stands. No cameras, no weapons, no roads. At the heart of it, a bench, carved from native wood, facing a pond that reflects the galaxy above. It is said that if you sit there long enough, the birds will approach you. Not because they're tame, because they're no longer afraid. That was Earth's legacy. Not fire, not conquest, permission. The Pact of Teeth grew, but not like empires do. No borders, no flags, just understandings. Species that once fought in silence now shared histories in open language. Predator and prey no longer defined one another by trauma, but by choice. 1,000 cultures reawakened ancient instincts not to kill but to learn what strength meant beyond survival. Not everyone joined. Some couldn't. The Grisari, who still believed anything stronger than them, was a threat. The Sylvantra, who refused to let go of fear. But even those who stayed outside the pact found themselves changed. Because now, the galaxy had context. No one could pretend not to see. The humans? They receded. Slowly, gently, 1 billion humans still walked among the stars. But no longer at the center. They had already done what they came to do. They gave the prey teeth. They gave the galaxy its mirror. And now they stepped aside. It started with the closure of Earth's defense grid. The same satellites that once tracked inbound warships now monitored storms, solar flares, and whale migrations. Next came the dissolution of the Terran diplomatic arm, not because they were unneeded, but because their students, Quarry Droth, Valari Fen, had surpassed them in peacekeeping. And finally, the last ship from Sol ceased broadcasting its identifier. It simply blinked out one night drifting into the dark, not as a ghost, but as a promise fulfilled. Some say humanity returned to Earth. Others believe they seeded a new world, far beyond the reach of sensors, just to watch the galaxy grow without their shadow. And a few whispered that the apex predators didn't vanish at all, they just went to sleep, because the hunt was over. But sometimes, even centuries later, a strange vessel appears. No ID, no transponder. It's just a matte black hole, with heat scarring and a name etched in Terran Standard. Doubt Killer, Serendipity, or we're just watching. And the galaxy pauses. Because no matter how far they've come, no one forgets the sound of a boot print in the dark. In the Gar Larry archives, once sealed to all outsiders, a new exhibit opens, titled Before the Fire. All sculptures show ancient predator-prey cycles across worlds. And at the center, unchanged, unrestored's an old Earth photo. A human child in the African savannah, holding hands with a trained cheetah. Both are looking into the distance. Neither is afraid. The plaque below reads, "We were not born afraid. We were taught it. We're not born cruel. We were driven to it. And when we remembered our strength, we chose not to use it." They are not called humans anymore. Not by the Pact. Not by the next generation. They are called something else, the Origin, not because they were first, but because everything that followed traced its roots back to them. The children of prey, the heirs of predators, the future of the stars, all of it began with the species that remembered how to fight, and chose instead to teach others how not to.